There we go. Hello, good evening. It is Halloween. This is Discover Tai Chi for LimbPower. Here we are again. Let's get started without any further ado. Seated, standing, your choice. Okay. Connections. I think I've had a general theme of connections, how we connect ourselves. Some of you may know this. So the etymology, the kind of root meaning of a word, etymology, or is it etymology, of stress is to be stretched or constrained. And if we could say anything about Tai Chi and Qi Gong, it's a movement modality that helps us kind of move in a way that doesn't overstretch us, overtax us, and then maybe acts to ameliorate. God, it's like I've swallowed a dictionary. Helps us ameliorate some of the effects of feeling stretched, be that physically or mentally. So that's what I'm going to explore with you today. And in order to do that, we're going to do some movements that we don't necessarily do all that often. We're going to start off with a movement called Fair Lady Works for Shuttles. That's a mouthful. But it looks like this. One hand will be pushing forward and one hand will be lifted overhead like so. So we create this shape and there's a sense of connection through the top hand to this hand pushing forward. So I'm just doing that to illustrate the shape. So let's start with the right hand pushing and the left hand lifting, but try to just follow the rotation as far as you feel comfortable. So if I'm pushing with that right hand and lifting that left hand, I'm rotating to the left and I'm looking to the front hand. So you kind of get this bit of a twist. And then I'm going to let everything relax. And then obviously we're going to push the left hand forward. The right hand is going to lift. The fingers face forward, if you notice, and I twist into that push. But I always keep this upper hand just above the head and then unwind. Okay, feel that? Get a feel for that? Let's try again. Right hand pushing. As rotation, you can probably feel that through the trunk, through the spine. So again, just get a feel for that. Don't think of it as a stretch. Just use it as an opportunity as I push the left hand forward to get a feel for that movement. Let me demonstrate it seated. I'll keep on this orientation. So I think we're back on the right hand. So when you're seated, again, you really do get that rotation in the trunk. I'm going to do it again, this time left hand. In simpler terms, I learnt it as a form of archer. It's as if we draw this bow. Here's the bowstring hand, here's me pushing. It's a bit different from when we do it as a movement in the 8 strands of brocade, but it's still the same kind of feel of drawing a bow and having this connection between the hands. It's almost as if that there's a set of threads from these fingers and they kind of stretch gently and connect with the forward hand and fingers as well. So that can be quite a nice image to kind of create a loop that is connected. Just explore that movement and the rotation that we get with it. Fab. Okay. So we'll extend that movement. We'll turn it into something maybe a little bit more familiar, but we're getting to that kind of familiar movement via a different route. So what I mean is, so if I push my right hand forward, and then I'm going to let the top hand fall away behind me, turn the palm over and turn the other palm over, and we kind of end into this wise owl position, don't we? In fact, we could drop the hands down, follow that movement, and then we could pick up the left hand, push that forward, lift the right hand over, and then turn, open the hands out behind, and then just continue to let them drop. And you may begin to get the sense that if we can push and lift, here's the right hand forward, follow that movement behind, we can begin to slowly but surely join that movement together so that we get this continuation from one side to the other. It's a little bit challenging. Got to remember which hand you started pushing with. That's it. So we begin to make these loops and circles, and it really gives us a jolly good workout through the back and shoulders. I'm pretty sure you'll be feeling that. Head and neck as well. So don't worry if we're in sync. Just see if you can go in a rhythm. Generally slower is the way to go. That facilitates this ability to transition into that wise owl position that hopefully you're familiar with. I'm going to do one more, because that can be quite a bit of work. Okay, so have a bit of a shakeout. But it's this sense of connecting movement so that we begin to move into this sense of almost like perpetual motion, shall we say. This sense that everything leads into the next sequence. So, some of you may have already guessed, we can continue that sense of connection and move from that movement of Fair Lady works for shuttles into another Tai Chi movement from a Yang form called Repulse the Monkey. Okay, so it comes out of that wise owl position. Shall I show you? So I'm pushing my right hand, so there's our archer position, or working the shuttles. There's the continuation behind, turning my hands over. But instead of dropping my hands, I now push that left hand through, which then gives me an opportunity to lift the right hand, and there we are, back into working the shuttles. And then I can turn that wise owl position, but instead of dropping my hands, I push through like so, and we lift that hand overhead to then drop down and push through again. Shall we have a go together? Some of you are probably following along, but let's have a go together. So it's going to be right hand pushing, left hand going overhead, falling behind, but then pushing through to join this repulse monkey movement, the push forward back into working the shuttles. Again, just demands a bit more coordination. So here we go. Right hand's pushing forward, left hand's raised, turning, falling behind, and once we've got the palms facing upwards, I then push through. As that left hand comes through, I can just lift the right hand, create the circle behind, push through, and we begin to create this connection between the two movements, but you've got to remember to lift each respective hand, to let it fall behind, to then push through again, and then lift the other hand out the way, so to speak. So that's quite tricky. I know it's challenging. Let's see if you can get into the rhythm from one side to the other. We go again, lifting. I'm going to do one more, because this really works us through the upper torso and the shoulders. So we're going to relax. Woo. Okay. I've already done another class this afternoon where we went through all of these, so my shoulders are really getting a good workout today. So connections, this sense that even though the hands are moving in often opposite directions, we try to maintain this sense of connection, of continuity. It's something that we could say was very indicative of Tai Chi and Qigong. I'm just going to take my glasses off. Okay, so let's just kind of draw things back and kind of keep things a little bit more simpler for ourselves, having started off with something a little bit more challenging. In order to do that, the best way is to do movements that are very symmetrical, very easy for us to kind of coordinate. So let's do 4 directions, okay? Pushing forwards to the sides, up and down with both hands at the same time. So I'm picking up my hands, could be a breath in, and then there's this push forwards. Maybe with a breath out, but you decide whether you want to just focus on the movement or bring the breath in. Here I go, pushing out to the sides and drawing the hands in. This time, pushing upwards. And then drawing the hands down, and they're going to come all the way down. If you're seated, you'll have to avoid knees, armrests and things. Bring them up to then push directly down. Again, if you're seated, you can choose to push either side of the seat or maybe down between the knees. Your choice. Okay, so there's our 4 directions. Let me come a little bit closer. Can you point, I hope you can, with that index finger and the thumb rests along the top. Try not to have a teapot handle, as my teacher used to say. Just let the thumb relax against it. Doesn't matter what the other fingers are doing. Again, in the old days, they wanted a very flat hand, but I'm not that pernickety. What we're interested in is that pointer or index finger and thumb. That's the emphasis that we're doing. I'll tell you why in a mo, but for now, let's do 4 directions again, but this time with those pointers or index fingers in that position. So it looks like this. If I turn to the side, we're picking my hands up, I form that hand shape with the index fingers and I push like so. Then I can relax the hands, draw them back, and then I do the same to the sides. I form that hand shape with the index fingers and push once more out to the sides. Relax the hands, draw them back, overhead, pushing with those index fingers overhead, like so. And then the hands come down. If I come a bit closer, you can see that I make that hand shape, but I push down while making those pointers. Yeah, it's rude to point, I know, but it gives you that idea of pointing. Okay, so hopefully the question is, why, Phil? Why are we kind of emphasizing the index finger and the thumb? So Halloween if we some people associate Halloween now with the older kind of Celtic idea of Samhain, which represents this transition into winter. And it kind of marks a transitional space, doesn't it, from one season to another. And hence bonfires and celebrations and getting sweets off your neighbours. It correlates in a similar fashion to seasonal change celebrations in China. But also from the health aspect of Chinese culture, which is kind of what we explore here, when we emphasize the index finger and thumb, we are placing an emphasis from a Chinese health theory perspective, I should say, on the lungs and the associated respiratory system. And it's associated with this time of year, this sense of the lungs are more prone to infection, which funnily enough, they seem to be. Coughs, colds, influenza. We've now got COVID in the mix as well. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it, that we've got this sense. The index finger and the thumb also represent the larger colon or the large intestines. It's also interesting that we have norovirus that goes around, which is a very unpleasant intestinal bug as well. So interesting for the Chinese. So when we emphasize those two fingers in Chinese health theory, I should say, we're trying to tonify or strengthen those organs. Now, there's lots of questions that arise from that, but it's an interesting idea. It was how I was taught many years ago. Do you want to have another go? We'll do the 4 directions again with that index finger pointing, and maybe with just a sense of awareness on that finger as it points as we push in each respective direction. Out to the sides. Up above. And then down for the last time, with those index fingers and the thumb having an emphasis. So we can do 4 directions as we've done before, diagonally. But we can use that same hand shape. From Eastern perspectives, it gets called a mudra. That represents a hand shape, and those hand shapes have all kinds of connotations. If you've ever seen any kind of Eastern dance performances from Southeast Asia or India or even China, hand shapes and hand expressions are incredibly central to helping tell the narrative. And they all have an influence in terms of what goes on in Tai Chi and Qigong, because as we've explored before, they all kind of overlap. We've got martial arts here, health and well-being here, and then we've got dance, theatre, performance, and they kind of all come together. There's no distinction. It's as if a famous ballet dancer, Darcy Bussell, not only was an expert ballerina, but she also boxed. And then she also got up on the stage and did some comedy routines or something instead of that. Or she practiced as a masseur. I don't know, maybe she does all of that and I just don't know that, but it would be that kind of strange kind of meeting place. So let's form that hand with the right hand. We're looking up to the left and we're pushing up in that direction. And then we relax the hand and draw it back. And then we do the same with the left, only this time I'll look up to the right and push in that direction. and then draw it back. Here we go, right hand, this time looking and pushing down to your left, and then drawing back. Left hand, looking and pushing down to your right, like so. Here we go again, right hand, looking, pushing up to the left on that diagonal. Left hand, looking, pushing up to the right, and drawing back. Right hand, last time, pushing down to the left, and left hand finally down to the right. There you go. So we're creating this cross, and again, in Chinese movement culture, we have this sense of everything from the extremities, be it the fingers to the toes, be it the limbs, even if we are missing limbs, I should hasten to add, all come together in a center that would represent the center of our mass, which is kind of round here. And the idea within our movement modality is to move as if everything is connected, i.e. one thing can't move without having a certain impact on the other thing, hence this exploration at the beginning. And then we put those ideas together and we begin to find ourselves exploring these movements in a choreographed series of sequences that we call Tai Chi. So we've been exploring part the wild horse's mane, and into white crane spreads its wings. So shall we have a go together? And again, all of the hand shapes that we find in these movements all each have their own meaning and association with health and well-being. It would take me a long time to explain it all as we went along, but hopefully it's kind of piqued your interest. So I'll stay seated just to start us off with. Hands can either rest on our knees if we are seated, or to the sides. If we're standing up, just let hands hang loosely or limbs hang loosely. And then we're picking up the hands to start with Qisha, which, as we know, is about setting the scene, so to speak. And then we're going to catch our first ball. And we've got the right hand on top. If we can make sure we get that right hand on top, it helps give us a signpost to turn to the right. And then we're doing our first part the wild horse's mane. Here's my left hand coming out and my right hand has come down to find that imaginary table. And then I'm catching my second ball. There it is. Left hand on top, turn to the left, and then we part the wild horse's mane. For a third time, we catch that ball, and this time part the wild horse's mane. Fab. Fourth ball, here it comes, catch, left hand hopefully is on top, and then we're bringing that right hand over, and then we're opening up into white crane. So there's my right hand overhead, here's my left hand, or we should say wings, being a crane, and then I do a little turn to the left and then stop, but the hands kind of keep in motion. And they begin to make their circles respectively, and they keep circling, and we begin to find ourselves heading to the right in this position, as if holding a tea tray, and then I begin to push my right hand forward, dropping the left hand above the knee into brush knee. And then let's have a rest there. Yeah? Shall we have another go? Next week, I'm going to talk about a focus that we can have with an acupressure point situated in the hands. But I'm going to save that for next week so that we can explore it in more depth as we go through this little form. But for now, let's have a go with those movements once more, and we'll see if we can do in enough time the brush knee movements as well. Ready? 1, 2, 3, off we go. Very slow. Give yourselves time to think and feel. Catch that first ball and just double check that the right hand's on top. That's our sign to turn right. And then it's part the wild horse's mane 3 times. First one is with a left hand lead. Second ball, second part the wild horse's mane, right hand lead. Third ball. We've got that left hand lead again. Fourth ball, here it comes. And now we're into white crane. So the right hand is lifting just above the head, and the left wing is down below. Turn to the left, stop. But the hands kind of keep in motion and just keep circling. Here comes my left hand over the top, the right hand turns over, and they find their way on the right side. And then it's brush knee. Drop the elbows, let that right hand push forward. And there's the left hand just above my knee. Very apt. Here's a tea tray on the left. I just catch it with the left palm. There's my right hand in support, and then just drop the elbows. And the hands come down into position with a push forward, just like so. Finally, on the right side with those hands, catch a tea tray, and there's our final brush knee. We can finish nicely if we wish by just crossing the hands, turning them in, making a flower, which again is a movement found all across Asian and Southeast Asian dance styles, and then we can bring the hands down and bring them to rest on that lower part of the abdomen, the place where everything comes together via the legs and the lower limbs and via the upper limbs. We can take a breath and just kind of have that sense of everything being connected and breathing with that sense of togetherness. That everything is collected and that we are not overstretched or stressed. In fact, we're the very opposite, I hope. Have a breath in, let it go. And then we can part the hands. And there we go. So I've kind of introduced quite a bit, and we've explored quite a lot. But I hope that was interesting, and we'll pick up the threads, if you don't mind the pun, or the extension of the metaphor, next week. So thank you very much. For people who are watching later, again, thank you for joining us. I know we get quite a lot of views actually on YouTube, so it's nice to see that. As always, if you have a question, you can always get in touch. We have our WhatsApp group via LimbPower as well, so you can always get in touch with any questions. And stop the recording. And bring things to a close.